Hello all, welcome to the Indigenous Opportunities from SMR panel session. We'll be discussing the importance of Indigenous opportunities from SMRs. For those of you who are not in the previous panel, my name is Dazawray Landrie-Parker. I'm a PhD candidate at Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy at the University of Saskatchewan. I'm also an instructor at Yukon University in the Indigenous Governance Program. Today I'm coming to you from Treaty 6 and the homeland of the Métis. I'd like to start off by thanking our panel sponsors, Moltex Energy and Arc Nuclear. Today, we have two panelists who will be providing us a short presentation, followed by a discussion period. Feel free to ask your questions in the question panel or even the chat box as we go. I'll keep an eye on them and ask them at the appropriate time. First, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Mr. Sean Willy. Mr. Willy was appointed the Chief Executive Officer of Nedhe Development in August of 2017. He has over 20 years experience in resource industry and an extensive history in executive leadership, community development, and human resources. Welcome, Mr. Willy.
Thank you, Dazawray. Great to be here. I want to extend a big gratitude to Guy Lonechild and his team. It's been a great 2 days just to listen in, to see all the positive and enthusiasms around SMRs. I also want to thank our elders and past leaders who have worked hard setting the groundwork to get us to this point and have these important discussions. So a bit about me. I was a kid born in Inuvik, Northwest Territories, grew up in Yellowknife, Rankin Inlet, Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. Mom's a Denisootlanet woman from the Mercredi family, Northern Saskatchewan, Northern Alberta, and Northwest Territories. Happy to be here speaking on behalf of Nedhe Group of Companies, which is a 100% owned First Nation Economic Development Corporation. It's owned by the English River First Nation. So if we can throw up my slide deck, and I'll just start with giving you an overview. Of course, the best way to tell who we are is where we're from. And so English River First Nation, very proud Denisootlanet people, about 550 kilometers northwest of Saskatoon. The trivia question is going to be, what does Nedhe mean? Nedhe comes from the Denisootlanet word Great River. English River traditional territory is on the south side, the Churchill River in northern Saskatchewan. And in the summer months, the community would hunt, fish, and harvest northwards up to Cree Lake. In the winter months, come down to and camp along the Churchill River. So the English River, the story really starts long time ago, and we could just keep it here because English River territory is home to some of the best moose hunting, woodland caribou, fish and fowl in the country. So it's a beautiful landscape as much as northern Canada is. And their story really took a turn when they found the world's highest grade uranium deposits in the backyards. And the elders and the leaders knew they had an opportunity here to transition their community. At this time, the Europeans were really putting a lot of fur bans on, and so one of the traditional economies was dying away without them doing anything. So they thought, how can we be part of this new opportunity? And so the community wanted to learn everything they could about the environment. How do they be part of this process? How do they create jobs for their young people? And how do they create own source revenue? Because they didn't want to rely on the federal government. They knew that their path to self-determination existed with them defining their own source revenue. And you have to remember, this is long before terms like economic reconciliation. So English River pushed for a seat at the table, made sure the provincial government, like many of the northern Saskatchewan communities at the time, when they found these new resources, that these communities saw it as a progressive opportunity to create socioeconomic benefits. And so the communities pushed the provincial government and the federal government to hold panel hearings that laid out specific activities that they wanted included. They wanted to be part of the economy. They wanted jobs, they wanted training, they wanted education. They wanted to be part of the decision-making on the environmental impacts, the ongoing monitoring, and the reclamation and decommissioning of these uranium mines going forward. And so this was long before the diamond mines in Northwest Territories, long before the oil sands. And so I always hold up the elders and the leaders in the late 70s or early 80s in northern Saskatchewan as for the people that set the model. And the companies are good corporate citizens, but they hold the tools. And if it wasn't for these First Nation Métis communities who pushed to be included, I don't know where the discussion would be today. So I thank you for all those elders. So, you know, and the other thing I've been hearing a lot lately around nuclear is around we need to base things in facts. And English River and Indigenous people in general, we're very pragmatic in our approach. And this ties well into nuclear and especially small modular reactor development. Right now, everyone's positive and enthusiastic about SMRs. But I've worked in the nuclear industry and I can tell you that when you're actually getting closer to developing and deploying an SMR, we're going to hear the rhetoric, we're going to hear the scare tactics, we're going to hear the reasons why not, and all the negative consequences that are been surrounded around nuclear deployment. And we need to be included in these conversations and be factual and be pragmatic in our viewpoint. So if we just set the facts on what nuclear is the safest form of energy right now going. Nuclear is key to the base load growth that we're expecting. And we keep talking about more electrical outlets. I'm sure like you guys, all our kids are now plugging in their iPods and iPhones, their Nintendo Switches, their Xboxes, and all that needs electricity. Now cars are next. So we need base load electricity. Nuclear is key to that. The renewables can't fix that on its own, and we've seen that over the last 12 years. Saskatchewan is home to the highest grade uranium deposits. That's a fact. And these have been fully supported by Indigenous communities over that lifetime. As a fact, 1 in every 10 American homes is powered by nuclear power. That uranium comes from English River's traditional territory. And another fact is that the Nedhe group of companies is now currently working for some of Canada's largest nuclear players and electrical players, including OPG, Bruce Power, Hydro One, SAS Power, and Cameco. And I'm extremely proud of the team and our community and our individuals across the country working to support and providing tier 1 services to these clients. So next slide, please. So how do we get there? We are one of the oldest First Nation economic development arms in the country. So we've had that history, we've had that time to take that road down the economic journey. We've developed policies, procedures, and standards. We've separated politics from business. We let the First Nation handle the political side. As a business, we want to create strategies, vibrant partnerships, and build upon our foundational assets. We want to be business focused. So we want to use our leverage as a large Indigenous company to get the work, but we want to complete the work with high quality, high safety performance, great customer service. We're going to bring the Indigenous inclusion with us. It's part of our DNA. So that has brought a very high successful rate in building and managing a broad portfolio of companies in Canada's mining, nuclear, industrial, and agricultural sector. I'm very proud of our leadership team that has extensive experience across the country. And we can just jump to the next slide. You know, we have our CEO at Tron Construction, Anthony Clark, comes from a project management background, major projects engineering, uranium mining, and helped establish our Ontario arm, which helps out with Cameco's fuel supply facilities, but also was key in creating a unique partnership with a couple entrepreneurs of the Nawas First Nation, and we formed Tron Makwa, who's now working at Bruce Power. Leanne Hall, a vibrant leader who runs our Creative Fire Shop out of Toronto. And Leanne has a strong background in Northern Ontario, worked with Deloitte, we're happy to have her, and we're nationalizing Creative Fire, communications, marketing, strategy, research development company with strong ties to First Nation communities and corporate Canada. And we have Jamie Dixon. Jamie and I negotiated many of the agreements in Northern Saskatchewan and went international, talking to Indigenous communities about uranium development. So myself, born in Northwest Territories, seen firsthand the positive aspects of economic development on communities. I've met with the majority of First Nations who have uranium or nuclear ambitions on their mind, and we've created value-added strategies for both the communities and the clients that wanting to come in and access those resources. We've taken that Canadian model, that Canadian Indigenous model, and exported it to Australia, where we, and some of the opportunities we see within nuclear are around that business development. So the supply chain, How do we build off that supply chain to get into the construction, the operations that are occurring while the site is in development, to the employment opportunities, the education, the training components to get our people to that point, and to the monitoring of the environment, the planning, the design of these sites that incorporates traditional knowledge, but also planning for when they go away and the reclamation and decommissioning. So we have a wealth of experience tied with our community and their wealth of experience. We think Nedhe is already one of the leaders in nuclear in Canada. And my last slide, please. So we feel Nedhe has a very strong value proposition on nuclear focus. We already are working in the nuclear sector. We have a strong history of working in the nuclear sector. We have created the accreditations, the experience, the safety principles, the quality principles to support the nuclear industry. We have strong community leadership. Does everyone agree with nuclear? No. We have good, robust conversations. 2 weeks ago, I was in English River. We had a very good discussion around small modular reactors with some of our people that are against it, some of the people who are for it, but all with the receptivity of wanting to learn more and move forward together. So we have very strong, supportive and understanding elders. So this 30 years of uranium mining experience, a group of companies with experience across the nuclear supply chain. And we feel we're leaders in nation-to-nation business partnerships. We think that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities should work better together. We think we have the capacity and the strength to share our experiences, to provide better commercial agreements, and to lift each other up with this great economic development opportunity. So we think nuclear is the future for safe, reliable energy, and Nedhe is and wants to play a major role in this going forward. Well, thank you very much, Dazawray.
Thank you, Ms. Willy. Next, I'd like to introduce our second panelist, Mr. Jim Ward. Mr. Ward has a substantial background in business operations, business planning, community development, and consulting. One of his key responsibilities is providing leadership as the general manager to the North Shore Micmac District Council, and also to the North Shore Micmac District Council, Aboriginal Aquatic Resource and Ocean Management. Mr. Ward has over 30 years experience in project management, business administration, governmental lobbying. And he's also a recent graduate of the University of New Brunswick's Management Development Professional Development Certificate Program. Welcome, Mr. Ward.
Hello. Like I said, just want to welcome everyone. Like I said, I want to thank Guy and his team for this wonderful event. I think, like I said, events such as this and organizations such as First Nations Power Authority are the key to helping First Nations across Canada move forward with economic reconciliation and also moving an important file like SMRs forward. So, like I said, my name is Jim Ward. I'm General Manager, North Shore Tribal Council. I'm from the Nadawaneg First Nation here in New Brunswick, also known as Eel Ground First Nation. Like I said, our tribal council is made up of 7 different First Nation communities. And like I said, we provide a variety of services. So my presentation here is to talk about our tribal council and the services we provide. And like I said, our focus on being involved in the SMR files here in New Brunswick, like I said, working with the 2 companies here in New Brunswick, and like I said, also being involved in supply chain. Can you go in with the slideshow, please? As you can see from the first slide, these are our 7 First Nations. This is our main office. Like I said, we've been here for since 1992, I think. We've got plans to move into a new facility because we have offices in 4 different locations. And like I said, it's our goal to get everybody under one roof. So next slide, please. Who we are. North Shore Micmac District Council was incorporated in 1987 as a non-for-profit entity to provide advisory and technical support for our 7 First Nation members. We also provide other professional contracted services to 25 other First Nations across Atlantic Canada. Chief George Ganesh of Nadawaneg is the CEO of the Tribal Council, and we are governed by a board of directors made of the chiefs of each of our member communities. I'm the general manager and manage a staff of approximately 50. Like I said, number fluctuates depending on season and contracts. Next slide, please. First Nations in New Brunswick. So we have 15 First Nations in New Brunswick. New Brunswick is made up of Mi'kmaq and Maliseet communities, and we also have Passamaquoddy in southern New Brunswick that don't have an official reserve yet, but are working on it. And they're the one that's closest to Point Lepreau. So, but again, like I said, part of our advocacy at North Shore is to work with the other First Nation communities because, like I said, it's for the SMR files to move forward in New Brunswick. Like I said, we have to be working together and enjoy and participate in all the benefits and opportunities that SMRs will bring here in New Brunswick. Next slide, please. The services that the North Shore Tribal Council provide include technical services, financial advisory services, child and family services, especially Jordan's principal. We have a post-secondary education support program. We also have training and employment skills development, ISETs, new government acronym. We also have, like I said, aquatic resource and ocean management, AAAROM. That's related to fish and wildlife. We also have staff that are engaged in traditional ecological knowledge and First Nations engagement. And we also, like I said, support community development through advisory services. Next slide, please. Our core and probably one of our strong points of our tribal council is our technical service division. We have a professional team made up of engineers, civil, structural, mechanical, and electrical. We also have, we've, like I said, it's a key for our tribal council to, like I said, engage our youth and hire our youth and mentor our youth. So like I said, a number of our professional staff are from our communities and local communities. They're Indigenous. So like I said, they're the ones that are setting an example for others in the communities to, like I said, look at these kind of trades, because we surely don't have enough. And like I said, with technologies like SMRs coming up, we really need to focus our youth into kind of engineering and trades fields. So again, we have a couple of staff that are certified engineering technologists and technicians. We also have an emergency management coordinator, and just a recent program that we're starting for our communities is an overall response operator for water and wastewater treatments. Like I said, this is a file that's very important for our communities, and like I said, it's clean water is should be, like I said, mandatory for all communities. And like I said, it just again, like I said, it's with the Department of Indigenous Services. Like I said, we're seeing more and more services being downloaded to tribal councils, and like I said, we're preparing for that. And like I said, we're growing our technical service division, and like I said, we see a lot of strength and growth in the future. Next slide, please. Some of the services and technical expertise that our tech services provides are housing. We do inspections, design, capacity building, community planning for, like I said, not only our communities, but communities across the Atlantic. Asset management, we work with ISK and another tribal council to, like I said, do inventories of all the different assets in our communities. And all this data is incorporated into the acres reports. We have staff that work with our communities, maintenance management, emergency management, solid waste management, and circuit rider training program. Like I said, we have staff that work with water and wastewater operators and mentor and train them to, like I said, better support their water and wastewater systems. So again, another key role is that we act as a technical expertise hub for housing and infrastructure, serving, like I said, First Nations across our Atlantic region. Next slide, please. The North Shore Tribal Council SMR involvement. Like I said, I've met and participated in a couple of sessions last fall, and by both Moltex and ARC. And like I said, I just after these presentations were having NB Power have these companies, like I said, talk about roles in the supply chain and talking about the opportunities that New Brunswick First Nations would have in that supply chain. So like I said, after the presentations, I made it clear that I think if these companies want to really do business in New Brunswick, is that they have to realize that the First Nations here in New Brunswick want to be more than just a part of the supply chain. Like I said, they want to have equity in these companies and in the technology. And so like I said, I think, like I said, we had one company that was very interested in working with us. And we're trying to look at different ways to make this happen. But like I said, we're moving on with, like I said, Moltex. And like I said, they understand where we're coming from. And like I said, once companies realize that they can engage and make First Nations involved and a part of the process and have ownership, you're going to find you're going to have the strongest allies moving these files forward. So like I said, there's a number of opportunities and advantages of working with First Nation organizations that, like I said, are willing to partner and work with a number of these companies moving SMR file forward. And like I said, like I said, that's our involvement, and that's where we're coming from. Like I said, we're not going to stand idly by and wait for companies to come to us after plants are already started and we forgot about you. No, we want to be there at the beginning. And like I said, I think, like I said, that's the new way of business to happen in our territories. And I think, like I said, it's going to, like I said, lead to better and more successful projects. Next slide, please. Another advantage that companies will realize, and like I said, more they learn about First Nation communities, is that our communities are, like I said, amongst the youngest age groups in New Brunswick and Canada. Like I said, here in New Brunswick, it is an older province, but the fastest population growth that's happening in New Brunswick is in the First Nation communities. Like I said, an average age of 31 years is common in all of our communities, and even lower. And like I said, we have a large untapped labor force that's willing to get trained and go to university to learn of these, like I said, take part in these education for these opportunities. The thing is, where our role working with companies is to identify the opportunities. The thing is for far too long is that we've had too many First Nations people getting into different kind of education programs where, like I said, the jobs might not have been there, or like I said, it's not what the labor force needs. So we have to go and identify that labor force, and that, like I said, when these kids come out of university or trades programs, is like that, the jobs will be there and we can fill those jobs. Because like I said, we don't agree with the province and the feds looking at immigration to fill these technical fields. Like I said, we have the people here that, like I said, given the direction and opportunity, and like I said, opportunity is everything. Is that, like I said, these are high paying, well-skilled jobs. And like I said, we need that step up to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And like I said, it's going to be key to making First Nations economic development grow. And like I said, it's a key of our economic self-reliance. So like I said, our populations are growing quite fast. And like I said, so there's a lot of opportunity there with prospective jobs and people to fill those jobs. Next slide, please. Again, this is coming to the end of my presentation. Again, we have 15 First Nations. We want to all work together to succeed, the SMR file succeed, but a lot of work still has to be done. We need a lot of consultation in our communities to talk about nuclear energy, SMRs, to get them on side. And like I said, after that, getting that knowledge out there is to, like I said, fully engage them in these opportunities that can happen. And like I said, it's just moving forward with equity stakes and building that supply chain. So again, I think the final slide. Again, there's my contact information. I'm willing to, like I said, answer any questions, or like I said, if anybody wants to follow up about our tribal council, feel free to get a hold of me. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Ward. And thank you to both of you for your presentations. We're going to move into some questions, but before we do that, I just want to mention this panel's gamification code. So for all those who are earning points to collect some of the prizes at the marketplace, our gamification code for this panel is OPP20. So that's OPP20. So we have some time left. So again, I encourage you to use the question panel if you have any questions. I have a couple myself from listening to these presentations. I think it's amazing to see what both of you have done in these unique situations and what has been built. For Sean, my question is, Nedhe has been extremely successful in the energy industry. Do you have any advice for some of those Indigenous economic development corporations or even Indigenous companies on ways that they can capitalize on this emerging technology that we see?
Thanks, Dazawray. It's a great question. It's the one we always hear, and it's about being patient, right? Using the teaching of our elders to think longer term. And it's always a balance, because we know the socioeconomic challenges within our communities, that we want to move as fast as we can and to create that own source revenue. But something as complex like nuclear, you have some of the smartest, brightest people working on nuclear from a technological standpoint, from the regulatory standpoint. The barriers to entry are very high. You need strong safety records, strong quality records. And what I've seen in my history, working with resource companies and working with First Nation businesses around the country, is we too often lead with the political factor, right? And our communities have had to fight for all the rights and title and everything through our community's history. And so we go into business meetings with that same mentality. And we have to start looking at a value proposition that's based on business and customer service and quality and safety. And I think that long history that Tron Construction had, we own Tron 100%, we own Creative Fire 100%. Both those companies have over 25-year histories. And when you have that history, you can develop the policies, procedures, standards. You can bring up your workforce, develop an Indigenous workforce on your terms. The other thing that English River did, which I'm very proud of, is they didn't go out and rush out to create joint ventures. They did this by themselves, and they took pride in owning their businesses 100%. And so we're not told by a non-Indigenous firm that we can't go work here, we can't go work there. We've developed those processes and procedures in-house, but that took time. And that always comes back to it just takes longer than you think. It's just not a straight, I'm going to win a contract and I'm going to win money. It's about reinvestment back into it.
Perfect, thank you. I like that idea of reinvestment and being patient. I think that is a good message for those newer companies and newer ACDEP corps. Jim, a question came through for you on how do you recommend that First Nation businesses seek out and secure opportunities from small modular reactors?
I think, like I said, it's just from our point of view, is that we have to work with companies and also government to, like I said, talk about SMRs and resource development. Because like I said, it just, from a standpoint, like I said, our First Nations in our part of the country, a lot of our First Nations are, like I said, are have not. We're like I said, Atlantic is known as like a have not region. So we rely on transfer payments from the other provinces. So like I said, we need to work with government agencies to see that a lot of these initiatives get supported, and we really engage our communities, our people in the communities, businesses in the communities, to, like I said, talk about the nuclear industry and the SMRs, and like I said, the opportunities that they provide. But again, it's important is that we need to do that engagement with our communities, and that's something that, like I said, we pride ourselves on at our tribal council. And like I said, and that's where we get a lot of our strong support from our leaders and our communities. So, and we're able to advance and look at other fields. But I think, like I said, the SMR field here in New Brunswick could be a game changer for not only New Brunswick, but like I said, New Brunswick First Nations and the rest of Canada. We could be leaders in, like I said, a worldwide opportunity. So again, like I said, is we need the government to come on board. Like I said, what we've been doing is lobbying is that any federal funding support that goes into the companies, into the province, and into the First Nations, is that we find some way to utilize that funding as equity in these companies and in this technology. Like I said, that's the only way we're going to get buy-in, because like I said, again, is that we're like the poorest of the poor. And I hate to say it, but again, like I said, this could be game changing, and like I said, be an awesome opportunity for not only our people, like I said, it's but our communities as well, and our businesses.
Thank you. Sean, did you have something to add?
Yeah, and I like Jim's point about there's a value component to what Indigenous companies and Indigenous communities can bring to the SMR developers. And I think that's quantifiable. And there needs to be some discussion around free carry equity within these projects, because, you know, any new energy development is going to need Indigenous participation on an equity front going forward. So, you know, some of the progressive ones are out there talking about, you know, can Indigenous communities help us get across the finish line with our technology? There's a value there that SMR developers should be bringing in Indigenous communities with some portion of free carry equity. I think the other aspect is we have to get better at accessing capital markets with a strong value proposition. And then I think provincial governments, federal governments can also back us with loan guarantees. You know, if you know, a group and we want to be part of SMR equity, and we're talking to a number of First Nations, and we're talking to a guy on a number of different instances, and how do you have a power purchase agreement in hand that you can take to the bank, and so that the banks can provide you some backing. So I think there's multiple ways to do it.
Thank you. The next question I have is actually for Jim, and this is a personal question from me. So thanks for sharing the structure and model, and the diversity of skills that you guys have is extremely impressive. I was particularly interested in the slide on the technical services division. So my background is in engagement with Indigenous communities on nuclear energy. And one of the things I hear in almost every community that I go into is that we just lack the technical expertise in our community. For a community who says that, or who thinks that, what would be some advice, or how would you suggest that they would build up this area of advisors? What steps should they take, or what should they focus on?
Well, it's kind of key for our organization, and still we don't do a very good job at it, is, like I said, we really got to promote our own. Like I said, we're lucky that, like I said, we've hired summer students and they've gone on to university and became professional engineers or technicians or whatever. And like I said, they're working back in these communities. And like I said, that's the thing, because we need to market our tribal council better, but we also have to market our Indigenous employees that, like I said, that have these professional designations. Like I said, we don't do the best job at it. And like I said, we hope that people recognize it, But I think, like I said, with marketing or whatever, honestly, like we've always talked about it, but like I said, it just with funding issues is that it'd be nice to see in every band office, whatever, when people come in, is like a life-size display of one of our engineers or our biologist. Like I said, and like I said, that gives something that people can see, is that, yeah, that person's from my community, and like I said, he can do it, I can do it. It just, we need to do better with our success stories. And like I said, it's highlight what we have, because like I said, they're the ones that are going to provide the incentive to have the younger generations move up and, like I said, want to work in our communities or expand and work off the community. Because that's the thing in our situation, like in our province, we have a lot of people that head out west. They're working out west in the oil fields and doing all kinds of great work. And the thing is that, like I said, they want to come back. And like I said, they have a lot of, like I said, skills that can be utilized here in New Brunswick. And like I said, if we can get this SMR files up and running and develop that supply chain, like I said, there's going to be a lot of opportunities, and we have our people coming back and being successful. That's like I said, that's kind of key.
Thank you. I really like the idea of, marketing these experts and marketing this, because I think that I know for me personally as an Indigenous woman was a big part of what pushed me farther, was being able to see other Indigenous women who were doing these things, and all of a sudden it became a little real. I can do this. This isn't so out there as a goal anymore. And I do think that's so important in our communities, is that we're highlighting those trades and those successes and those experiences for people. So thank you for that. I do have just one more general question, and this is really directed to both of you. In the previous panel, I asked the question, another question that I get asked a lot when I'm in a community, and that is, what are the benefits to the community of being involved in the nuclear energy sector? What would you say?
Well, again, comes back to the fundamentals about the community wants to create own source revenue to support their path to self-determination. Then it's having an equity stake in that nuclear power plant, with the understanding that nuclear is going to be the key to lowering our carbon emissions, and that's full stop. So having that peace of mind, building up companies that can participate in the supply chain that creates jobs, training opportunities, furthering education, scholarships for our people going to school, being part of the environmental discussions, getting involved early, so we're involved in those traditional knowledge, how to design, where to put it, but then also part of the ongoing monitoring and having our say in making sure the effluent coming out is safe, the air is safe, the animals around are safe. And then lastly, being part of the discussion on reclamation and decommissioning. I think all that brings community pride. And again, you need own source revenue to move away from the Indian Act to be self-determinant.
Definitely, and I think it's the idea of, ownership over the project, and not ownership in the equity sense, but ownership over all of those pieces you mentioned, Sean. I think that's great. I think that we're going to wrap up now. We've got a few more minutes left, but there's no more questions, and we only have 2 panelists, so I'm going to wrap it up a few minutes early. The next session is the virtual trade show, which will continue for 30 minutes, and then the next session will start after that. So before we wrap it up, I'd like to thank Sean and Jim for joining us here today and having these great presentations, showing us these models that I think truly are examples of successful models, and having a great discussion and answering all of my questions. I have quite a few more, but I have both your contacts now, so that's a good thing. If you would like to see further information, you can visit the trade show booths that are out there. You have about 30 minutes to do that before the next presentation. Thank you all very much for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Az. Thanks, Jim. Nice to meet you, Jim.